Hello and welcome to this special program of Rajya Sabha Television. Today we are going to take a close look at India's ambitious financial inclusion program, the Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna, that aims to provide basic banking and insurance services to millions of poor people.
It's 1 month since the launch of the ambitious financial inclusion program on the 28th of August, and an extremely encouraging response from the targeted population.
When Prime Minister Modi was sworn in, early days he said, can we do something and launch it? So homework started on it. And it's the first time that on 15th August, a Prime Minister announces a scheme. On 28th August, on one single day, 15 million or 1.5 crore bank accounts open.
On the very first day, having more than 1 crore accounts is, I think, a world record. It's a very good program. It's being done in a very positive way. It's a very simplified scheme in opening accounts. And I must say, it will help in really eradicating financial untouchability.
More than 4 crore bank accounts have been opened so far under the Pradhan Mantri Dhan scheme. That's against a target of 7.5 lakh new bank accounts by the 26th of January next year. Under the scheme, an account holder is entitled to a 1 lakh rupee accidental death cover and 30,000 rupees life insurance cover.
One is universal access to banking, and then basic bank account with overdraft facility, financial literacy program which is going to roll out. There's a credit guarantee fund which is very good, safety of money, and then micro insurance will also be encouraged through this, as well as pension.
The Prime Minister's Dhan Yojna that we are talking about in financial inclusion is only one pillar of a vast number of initiatives and schemes that have taken place over the years.
Experts point out that if implemented properly, the Dhan Yojna has the potential to wipe out financial untouchability. But Rajya Sabha TV's field assessment shows that there is a lot of scope for improvement in the way the scheme is implemented at the ground level. Long queues can still be seen outside bank branches. Despite the government's promise to open at least 2 accounts per household, many still haven't made it even to their first one. Vicky Kashyap from Chaprola village in district Gautam Budh Nagar has been trying to open a PMJDY account from the day the scheme was launched. The SBI branch at Shahberi village in Ghaziabad is the 3rd place he's trying after he was turned away from the last 2.
एक ये लाल कुएं पे है, भारतीय स्टेट बैंक है, वहाँ भी पूछा था, वहाँ भी नहीं बताया था किसी ने सही से, और एक पंजाब नेशनल बैंक है, उसमें भी कोई नहीं बताया सही। छपरोला में है वो सर, वो हमारे वहाँ पर ही है जी। कह रहे नहीं कि अब नहीं खुल रहे, मना कर दिया था जी। बस मैंने ऐसे कह के फिर आ गए, फिर जब मना कर दिया उन्होंने।
Poor internet connectivity and a cumbersome process are largely to blame. The point person at SBI's customer service point is trying to open Kashyap's account under the bank's tiny bank account system. It's different from the PMJDY and requires capturing of biometric data.
दिक्कतें ये आ रही है कि एक तो सर्वर स्लो चल रहा है, दूसरी बात है फॉर्मेलिटी इतनी ज़्यादा है फॉर्मेलिटीज़ कि वो 5 मिनट में खाता नहीं खुलता और वो डाउन हो जाता है, बंद हो जाता है। टाइम बहुत कंज्यूम होता है। अगर ये एक दफ़े में सारी फिंगर्स ले ली जाएं, इस तरह का मिल जाए कैम, तो काम जल्दी होगा और फॉर्मेलिटी कम करी जाए इसमें।
Then there's the massive rush. Publicity of the Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna has created a huge demand for bank accounts. Public sector banks are finding it difficult to cope with the rush.
ये स्कीम जो है डिमांड ड्रिवन होने के कारण अधिकतर लोग अपने आप बैंक में खाता खोलने आ रहे हैं, और बैंक जो है इतनी बड़ी संख्या में खाता खोलने के लिए फुल्ली प्रिपेयर्ड नहीं थे, गियर्ड अप नहीं थे, और बैंक के अलावा जो एनपीसीआई है वो इतने ज़्यादा डेबिट कार्ड सप्लाई करने की पोजीशन में भी नहीं था।
Now they have more or less geared up to meet this challenge, and the backlog is getting reduced also. So this will be done. There is not an issue, and passbooks also they are being provided. There is some backlog.
or the other way around. We found that several people from the targeted section are not yet aware about the scheme despite the massive publicity.
हम लोग को कुछ पता ही नहीं है, पढ़े लिखे नहीं है तो क्या समझ में आएगा बताओ।
अच्छा, आपस में मोहल्ले में भी कहीं किसी से कोई बातचीत नहीं?
नहीं।
आपने बैंक के बाहर लोगों की भीड़ लगी हुई देखी कि खाता खुलवा रहे हो?
कुछ नहीं सुने।
ठीक है, लेकिन फ्री में खाता खुलेगा तो खुलवाने के लिए आप तैयार हैं?
खुलवा लेंगे, ऐसे होगा सरकार सब करेगा तो खोलेंगे।
Slowing things down, the lack of quality internet and communication services. It gets far worse in remoter areas of the country, which is actually where the largest section of the target group lives.
Challenge is the connectivity, because all these accounts, they are electronic accounts and we have to transfer money on online basis. So therefore connectivity becomes very important. So there are about 50,000 villages in the country which do not have connectivity, or in some villages there is a poor connectivity. So that is a big challenge.
Public sector banks, who are at the forefront of this massive financial inclusion program, have urged the centre, state governments and telecom companies to take corrective measures. Providing telecom and ICT infrastructure in remote parts of the country to bring rural people into the formal financial system fold is critical to this scheme.
मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि BSNL को इसमें काफ़ी प्रयास करने की ज़रूरत है और अपने कनेक्टिविटी के नेटवर्क को आगे बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है, जिससे कि बैंक, BSNL, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट सब मिलके इस कार्यक्रम में यदि अपने सारे प्रयास करेंगे तो ही फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन सफल हो पाएगा.
Communication remains a huge issue with huge illiteracy levels. Several areas are completely out of reach of any kind of media whatsoever.
There are some black areas in this country जहाँ पर ना टीवी जाता है, ना जहाँ रेडियो जाता है और जहाँ ना अखबार भी पहुँचता है. तो ऐसे अभी भी बहुत से लोग हैं जिन तक ये स्कीम नहीं पहुँच पाई है, और इन गाँव के अंदर पहुँचना बैंक वालों के लिए भी थोड़ा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पुअर होने की वजह से, रोड ना होने की वजह से संभव नहीं हो पा रहा है.
Apart from the problem of effectively communicating with the target audience, banks also need to streamline their process of enrolling people in the rural areas. Even in relatively urbanized and prosperous Shahberi village in Ghaziabad in the National Capital Region, the Rajya Sabha TV team came across many who had not been able to open accounts. Others say they had submitted their PMJDY applications to the banking correspondent at the launch of the scheme, but their accounts have still not been opened.
मैंने 15 अगस्त को सुना था प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी जो भाषण दे रहे थे, उसमें सुना था मैंने कि जनधन योजना का खाता खुलेगा, हर इंसान अपना खाता खुलवाए, हर इंसान के पास एक खाता होना चाहिए. उसी के तहत मैंने यहाँ 28 तारीख को इनके पास खाता खुलवाया सर, जो कि मुझे बोला गया कि 2-4 दिन में आपको मिलेगा पासबुक वगैरह. सर मैं इनके पास रोज़ आता हूँ, ये बोलते हैं सर कि 2 दिन 4 दिन में आ जाएगा, 2 दिन 4 दिन में आ जाएगा सर.
The Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna was launched on the 28th of August, and many applicants submitted their forms to this kiosk the same day. But 20 days after the scheme was launched, when the Rajya Sabha TV team visited this state bank kiosk, the banking correspondent admitted that he had not sent the forms to the nearest supervisory branch of the SBI.
अभी तक हमने इनके 28 तारीख के पहुँचाए नहीं हैं स्टेट बैंक में, ये कलेक्ट कर रहे हैं, तो वो कलेक्शन में दिक्कत आ रही है. इकट्ठे कलेक्ट हो जाए 50-100 फॉर्म तो हम उनको पहुँचा दें और वो करके हमें दे देंगे.
Under the PMJDY, banks are not mandated to collect biometric data. However, this banking correspondent does just that as a matter of routine, even in cases of customers seeking to open a PMJDY account. He sets aside the fact that this account is different from other no-frills accounts already offered by public sector banks.
Business correspondents, because they are not paid enough, there's a high attrition rate, they're not appropriately trained, they're not even trained in soft skills how to open accounts.
Then there are the specifics of the scheme itself. Many people from the targeted section of society are not happy with bank overdraft facility of just 500 rupees.
ये फैसिलिटी वैसे 500 रुपये तो कम है मेरे हिसाब से, थोड़ा बढ़ा देनी चाहिए, शुरू में थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो, उसके बाद जो है, क्योंकि 500 रुपये में आजकल कुछ होता भी नहीं है, तो कम से कम 1000 रुपये तो रखनी चाहिए.
Opposition parties have been quick to criticize the government on lack of clarity.
Somebody who needs 500 rupees is really on the fringe of this country's financial system. Somebody who is getting 5,000 rupees is probably a little bit better, but they are still fringe. What does 5,000 rupees today buy you? You can't even go out and buy a goat or a cow or a buffalo to make a livelihood.
But banks and experts are divided over the issue. Banks defend their policy of enhancing the overdraft limit on the basis of credit history of account holders.
पॉलिटिकली किसी स्कीम को लॉन्च किया जाता है तो लोग समझते हैं इसमें सब कुछ फ्री मिल रहा है, लेकिन बैंकों ने इस बात को काफ़ी हद तक एक्सप्लेन करने की कोशिश की है टारगेट पॉपुलेशन को कि 5,000 का जब भी ओवरड्राफ्ट दिया जाएगा, एक तो वो किसी को अपफ्रंट नहीं दिया जाएगा, पहले अकाउंट खुलेगा, अकाउंट खोलने के बाद उस अकाउंट की क्रेडिट हिस्ट्री को स्टडी किया जाएगा और 6 महीने से लेके 1 साल के अंदर जब वो खाता जो है ठीक से ऑपरेट होगा उसके बाद उसको 5,000 रुपये का ओवरड्राफ्ट की फैसिलिटी दी जाएगी.
It is time for us to slip into a small break. After the break, we will look at some other aspects of the scheme and its implementation. Welcome back. In this segment, we will look at the history of financial inclusion in India, its current status, and also the possible ways to improve existing schemes like Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna.
To create an environment for large-scale implementation of the Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna, banking regulator RBI issued a circular allowing banks to open a basic account even if the customer does not have an officially valid document. This was done just 2 days before the launch. Under the order issued, these basic accounts would be valid for 1 year.
It is to enable those people to open their accounts. But these are temporary accounts, 1 year or 2 years. So within that 2 years time frame, they have to get a proper identity, Aadhaar number. Otherwise, if you wait, then there is no end to that waiting. He will also be under some pressure to get that identification.
However, Rajya Sabha TV teams found the provision has largely not been implemented at all.
ऐसी इन्फॉर्मेशन हमारे पास लिखित में कोई आए तो हम आगे ध्यान दें उसके ऊपर. कोई योजना हमारे ये योजना निकाली है पर हमारे पास तो अभी कुछ आया नहीं.
The top management of public sector banks blame it on a lack of proper communication with bank agents.
सादे कागज़ पे आप सिर्फ घोषणा करिए कि ये मैं यहाँ रहता हूँ, ये मेरा एड्रेस है और मेरे को इस स्मॉल कैटेगरी के अंदर ये अकाउंट खोलना है जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर जनधन स्कीम के अंदर एलिजिबल होगा. आपको ओरिएंटल बैंक ऑफ कॉमर्स की किसी शाखा के अंदर कोई समस्या नहीं आएगी.
It takes time for the orders to percolate down at the ground level. So we have been trying our best. We have been talking to the CMDs. We have written to them. Our officers here, they have been holding video conference every week.
The target group comprises people who often don't have any official identification documents. These same people suffer most at the hands of greedy money lenders.
We are a country where certain communities exist only to lend money. Sahugar, Mahajan, etc. etc. So, people lending money and people borrowing money is a part of your daily life. In these unbanked areas, people are not taking recourse to financial services. They are taking recourse to financial services provided by informal operators, money lenders, chit fund operators. All these characters thrive.
Experts say the recent Sarda chit fund scam is an eye-opener for policy makers. In the case, lack of access to the formal financial system caused havoc to millions of the lower and middle class as the chit fund company duped them of their lifetime savings. The Supreme Court ordered a CBI probe. Lessons were learnt the hard way.
The reason why so many people gave money to schemes like Sharda is that they just didn't have access to formal financial systems. I saw on TV a retired school teacher cry in Orissa saying that I got this gratuity when I retired. I needed to keep this money, I can't keep it at home, it is not safe. And when these people came and told me that it's safe, secure, I will give you such a handsome return, I gave them the money.
In a developing nation like India, financial inclusion has been an ongoing process. Experts trace its roots to the nationalization of banks in the late 1960s.
फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन जो ओरिजिनली स्टार्ट हुआ था वो तो आप देखिए जब 1969 में बैंक नेशनलाइज किए गए थे तब उसके पीछे पर्पज़ ये था वी शुड मूव फ्रॉम क्लास बैंकिंग टू मास बैंकिंग. उसके बाद बैंकिंग के अंदर लीड बैंक स्कीम की लॉन्च हुई और ये हुआ कि बैंक जो है गांव की तरफ जाएं, गांव की तरफ ब्रांचें खोलें.
Today, public sector banks admit that financial inclusion programs like the Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna are a critical tool of overall national development.
जितने भी विकसित देश हैं उसके अंदर क्रेडिट जीडीपी रेशो जो है वो लगभग 125% के आसपास रहता है। मीनिंग देयर बाई लगभग हर आदमी बैंकिंग फैटर्निटी से जुड़ा है, वो अपने जो लिमिटेड सोर्स हैं उसके को मल्टीप्लाई करता है बैंक से क्रेडिट लेके और तरक्की करता है और देश की ऑलराउंड प्रोग्रेस होती है।
Census data of 2011 says that out of 24.67 crore households in the country, 14.48 crore, or nearly 58.7% of the households, have access to banking services. Of the 16.78 crore rural households, 9.14 crore, or over 54% rural households, were availing banking services. In the urban areas, the situation is slightly better, as nearly 68% of urban households have access to banking services.
We have launched a survey program for all the households which are yet to be covered. So each bank is doing the survey. Some banks have already substantially completed, some banks will be completing now in this month. So I hope that by the end of this month, we will know village-wise number and the identification of the households which are still not covered. So then we will focus on those households.
This in itself, say experts, suggests that there is room to move forward.
The branch network, you look at the ATM network, you look at even the national optical fiber network, you look at mobile penetration, pretty much most of the infrastructure and the technology investment is there. We must align incentives so that banks have a profit, business correspondents have a profit, end customer has a benefit.
At the end of March 2014, there were over 1.15 lakh bank branches and more than 1.6 lakh ATMs in the country. Of this, close to 38% of the bank branches and 15% of the ATMs are in rural areas. More than 1.4 lakh business correspondents or BCs of public sector banks and regional rural banks are posted in rural areas.
More than 1 lakh bank mitras, they have been engaged by the banks, and we are going to engage another 50,000 odd bank mitras so that they can spread out to the villages where there are no branches.
These agents or correspondents represent banks to provide basic services like opening of basic bank accounts, cash deposits, cash withdrawals, transfer of funds, balance inquiries, mini statements and the like. Actual field experience suggests that there is a strong need to improve technology and communication network and train these agents.
They have to also develop skills, and soft skills basically, and train their staff how to go about with these poor unbanked people who have been out of the banking system.
You must find out which segment of people in which area doing what kind of activities have a requirement for what kind of financial products, and it is not just credit. Credit is one part of financial inclusion. There is of course risk-based risk mitigation products like insurance products, like medical products, like educational products.
Then the suggestions for corrections and improvements to the system. Experts point out that a mere increase in number of bank branches is not enough to implement financial inclusion. Banks need to change their approach completely with regard to economically weaker sections and become more poor-friendly.
Poor people are scared of stepping into the bank branch, even in that sophisticated posh area. Leave aside small towns and leave aside villages. So I think the mindset has to change, where one has to really think that banks are friendly places. One can go and pick up money or take advice from the banker.
Experts point to lessons to be learnt from the success of fast-moving consumer goods and telecom companies in profitably catering to the lower economic strata of society.
Telecom companies actually know the art of making large amounts of money, profits, from millions if not billions of small tiny transactions. Our banks just don't know this, and unless this business faculty is brought to bear on financial inclusion, it will not succeed.
Which again we have to learn from FMCGs. They did a fantastic job of aligning the incentives of their company, their customers, their master distributors and their endpoint distributors. All of them have an incentive to make money. There is money to be made for everybody, and therefore they were able to make sure that all of them succeeded in getting the message out to the last endpoint customer.
Also to blame for the sorry state of financial inclusion in the country, they say, is India's current regulatory environment.
A mobile phone with a prepaid card is actually a portable electronic vault. it contains money, right? You can recharge it remotely. This stored value right now can be used only for telecom transactions. But this is an artificial restriction imposed by regulation. Suppose you remove this restriction, then all payments can be made using the portable electronic vault that people carry around with them in their mobile phone.
Some suggest harnessing the vast network of post offices and fair price shops to increase financial inclusion. India has more than 1.55 lakh post offices and over 4.5 lakh fair price shops under its massive public distribution network.
Enabled the banks to appoint the rural postal postmen as the business correspondent, bank mitras, or the PDS shops, Kirana shops were there earlier also. So more and more of these fixed point persons, they are being appointed as bank mitras, they are based in those villages.
Others suggest a completely different approach, utilization of a network of private telecom operators and fast-moving consumer goods companies that have strong penetration levels in the hinterland.
If you give them full banking license, then they will be able to leverage their access and their distribution network to carry out much better banking transactions. And this is actually one of the recommendations of the committee set up by the RBI.
Yet another suggestion is use of the Aadhaar platform to improve and expand financial inclusion.
Nachiket, more committee recommendations. They are saying that every time an Aadhaar card is issued, in fact, at the same time, you just create a bank account when the person turns 18 years old.
Experts highlight the importance of the Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna in protecting the poor from greedy money lenders.
The objective of the financial inclusion scheme is to somehow get rid of money lenders. The reason one wants to get rid of money lenders is the high rate of interest that the money lenders charge.
A lack of financial inclusion is one of the biggest reasons for India's poor being condemned to remaining poor, despite a massive welfare program involving a sum of 3 lakh crore rupees in subsidies. Expectations are high from the PMJDY. Much rides on its success. Experts justify expenses on training and infrastructure for the scheme as critical investments towards eradication of poverty.
This is an investment. The unbanked population is being made comfortable with banking activities.
There's a widespread call for careful monitoring of the program and course corrections as and when required. Financial inclusion schemes in the past have run into rough weather after initial signs of success. Hope is things will turn out better this time.
We cannot go reckless about financial inclusion, and one should not be even competing against each other in financial inclusion. We have to be careful. There has to be some institution which is monitoring who's lending and how much is being lent. What is the per capita debt in the amongst the consumers? That has to be kept in mind very, very clearly.
Previous microfinance schemes did take off to some degree before unanticipated problems cropped up and they failed to be corrected. Hope is there's a more flexible approach now.
कल को दूसरी माइक्रो फाइनेंस कंपनी आई और उसने किससे कहा कि ये 500 देता है, हम आपको 1000 रुपये तक का लोन देंगे. जिस आदमी की आवश्यकता 500 थी उसको 1000 रुपये का लोन मिला, जिस आदमी की आवश्यकता 1000 रुपये थी उसको 5000 रुपये का लोन मिला. तो पूरा क्रेडिट कल्चर जो है विशिष्ट हो गया और वो आदमी उसको रिपे नहीं कर पाया. इसलिए माइक्रो फाइनेंस कंपनियां जो हैं वो फेल हो गई.
Failures in the past inclusive financial schemes have also been lessons of sorts. There's no doubting that the Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna has been an outright initial success in the sheer number of accounts opened. Then there's the other big benefit. Experts point out that savings from rural households are a potentially attractive source of deposits for banks and financial institutions.
70% of the gold sold in this country is sold in the rural areas. Therefore, there is purchasing power in the rural area, and if one is able to tap that, lots of resources would flow into the financial system.
Appreciation and positives win the day in the end, even amid the apprehensions and concern on the road ahead. As a social welfare policy and as a political strategy, this is win-win.
We have to do a lot more on a sustained basis. Otherwise, these accounts, they have the danger of becoming dormant accounts. We have to keep them alive through financial literacy so that people make use of these accounts more and more, through savings, use of debit cards, and then transfer of the government subsidies or pensions or wage payments into these accounts.
In the last 4 decades, India has attempted several big schemes to bring its poor into some kind of formal banking channels. But even today, more than 40% Indians have no access to any kind of banking services. The Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojna provides a wonderful opportunity to change all that. But to realize its full potential, it requires careful monitoring and timely course correction as well. Thanks for watching this special program. Keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.